Hi, it's Katrina. My friend David is going to be helping me out with the voiceover today, so I hope you enjoy.
Number 10. The Women of the Vatican. One of the strangest parts of the Vatican's past is a period in time called the pornocracy. It's also been called the rule of the harlots, or Caelum Obscurum, aka the Dark Age. During the pornocracy, the Vatican was mostly controlled by a series of extraordinary women. These were politically savvy women who knew how to manipulate the church to gain success. And much like the horrible popes who've existed throughout history, these powerful women had their own scandalous personal lives. One of the most intriguing figures during the rule of the harlots was Marozia, a noblewoman who climbed up the ranks due to her close relationship with various popes. Some historians even think Marozia may have been the most powerful woman who ever lived in Rome. But how did all these women come to power? It all started in the 10th century AD. In the year 904 AD, Pope Sergius III was elected to the papacy, and at the time, Marozia was just 15 years old. She was the daughter of Consul Theophylact and his wife Theodora, a power couple who controlled most of the business in Rome. Theodora had been gaining significant power from having romantic affairs with popes for years. So Marozia picked up on her mother's ways of conducting business and followed in her footsteps. She became the mistress of Sergius III during his years on the papal throne from 904 to 911 AD. She even had a son with the pope and leveraged her position to have immense power over the church. Rumor has it Marozia seduced even more popes as the years went on and continued to gain power. And she wielded incorruptible influence over political affairs in Rome, so that her own son became Pope John XI. Throughout much of history, popes have been chosen by an extremely small group of powerful Romans. These people are known as the papal electors, but during the pornocracy, it was the mistresses of popes who pulled the strings of the elections and decided who'd rule the Roman Catholic Church. Marozia was at the head of the mistresses, and she helped install Pope Leo VI and Pope Stephen VII as her puppets. But the era of the women rulers of the Vatican only lasted about 60 years. When the scandal broke that the Pope's mistresses had taken control, the church's reputation was dragged through the mud. Marozia was then captured in 932 AD and was left to die in prison over the next 5 years. And now for number 9. But first I wanted to give a big shout out to Shari Godwin 303 and Saltzmans. Thanks so much for watching and supporting OE. If you're new here, be sure to subscribe and join the family. Number 9. The Holy Fire. Christianity has no shortage of miracles, but there's one that happens every single year in the Holy Land. It's called the Holy Fire, and you can see it for yourself at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem. Holy fire is a blue light that radiates out of Jesus Christ's tomb, and it occurs once on Great Sunday just before Orthodox Easter. The light is like a beam of concentrated energy and ultimately forms a column of fire. The pilgrims and priests use this column of fire to light their candles, and the church claims the holy fire has been returning every single year since at least 328 AD. The miracle goes down the same way every year. First, a blue light slowly trickles from the tomb of Jesus. It rises out from the marble slab covering the stone bed where Jesus Christ's corpse was laid prior to burial. The light then gathers to form the column of flame, and once the flame is burning hot, everyone in the church is allowed to light their candles using it. It's like lighting candles with fire from heaven. Some in attendance even claim the holy fire lights a bunch of random lamps and candles inside the church, and those who touch the holy fire claim that it doesn't burn their skin, it only lights their candles. This isn't some vague ritual that nobody knows about. It's a big deal in Jerusalem. Thousands of pilgrims from all denominations of Christianity gather to witness the event. The holy fire is then collected and put on an airplane to Greece and other countries with major Orthodox churches. The flame travels to Syria, Romania, Russia, Egypt, and nearly a dozen other countries. Scientists have been the most outspoken group against the supposed miracle. They say the holy fire is a huge fraud. There's a big controversy surrounding the holy fire because scientists say it's impossible that a holy column of flame is spontaneously materializing every year. Some members of the Greek Orthodox clergy have even admitted that the holy fire is bogus. And in the year 1009 AD, Caliph al-Hakim bi-Amr Allah ordered the church to be destroyed because he was furious about the fake fake miracle. Even Pope Gregory IX denounced the holy fire as a fraud in 1238 AD. Number 8. The Eden Conspiracy. What if God were an alien? It's a simple question that isn't so easily answered. Many out there believe that the Bible is telling humanity more about beings from space than people realize. The Bible never comes out and says anything about extraterrestrial life directly, but it certainly alludes to it. There are dozens of Bible verses that can be interpreted as talking about aliens. Zechariah's flying scroll from Zechariah chapter 5 verses 1 to 2 sounds an awful lot like a UFO, and Ezekiel's wheels in Ezekiel chapter 1 verses 15 to 22 have also been interpreted as unidentified flying objects. And what about Elijah being taken to heaven on a chariot of fire in 2 Kings chapter 2 verses 11 to 12? Elijah is described as being taken into space on some kind of fiery machine. The Bible never directly says these things are UFOs, yet the way they describe them is hard to ignore. In Revelation, the Bible discusses the existence of millions of angelic beings. These beings could easily be interpreted as alien creatures. All through the Bible, it suggests angels, aka aliens, are constantly interfering with life on Earth. It might seem like a bit of a stretch, but God being an alien or race of aliens could make scientific sense. Just look at the story of the Nephilim. They were a failed genetic experiment discussed in the book of Genesis and the book of Enoch. The Nephilim were supposedly hybrid beings, a mix of human and angel, aka alien DNA, but they were so abominable that God flooded the world. It could be that the aliens tried to mix their blood with humans, creating terrible beasts who, eventually, they had to get rid of. At the very least, whoever wrote the Bible was inspired by creatures from another world. Scholars already know many of the stories in the Bible are variations from older stories from ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia. The angels in the Bible and the fiery chariots and bizarre cherubim may have been based on real alien sightings. Number 7. The Holy Staircase. In 2019, the Vatican unveiled the holiest staircase in the world for the first time in 3 centuries, and it's called the Scala Sancta. It's one of the weirder Christian relics because it isn't just a single artifact, it's an entire set of stairs. Jesus Christ supposedly walked up the stairs before he was judged by Pontius Pilate 2,000 years ago. The staircase was also stained with drops of Jesus' blood that spilled from his body as the nails were driven through his hands during his crucifixion ended up on the Scala Sancta. The pilgrims who journey to the Holy Staircase bend their knees and kiss the ancient bloodstains on the stairs. But the pilgrims weren't allowed to do it for the last 300 years because the marble staircase was covered in pieces of wood. In 1723, Pope Innocent XIII decided there were too many visitors. He thought there were too many people walking on the steps and that they were going to ruin them. So he ordered the stairs to be closed and covered in wood. The Vatican only recently allowed visitors to look upon the Scala Sancta once more, now that it's been restored and new frescoes have been added to the walls and ceiling. But is this really the staircase where Jesus bled, or is it another weird fraud like the Holy Fire? Well, that all depends on your faith. The Church claims the 28 steps were taken from the home of Pontius Pilate in the 4th century AD, and that they were brought from Jerusalem to Rome by Saint Helena. But it could also just be some random Roman steps, since, after all, there's been no authentication on the Scala Sancta. The bloodstains haven't been confirmed as belonging to Jesus Christ either. But if the bloodstains were real, you'd think scientists could get a DNA sample. Number 6. The Miracle of the Sun. The miracle of the sun unfolded on October 13, 1917, after a large crowd had gathered in the small town of Fatima, Portugal. They were there because of a prophecy that was made by the 3 oracles of Fatima, a trio of young shepherd children who were visited by the Virgin Mary. The shepherd children claimed the Virgin would appear on October 13th of that year to perform miracles. And the testimony of the children encouraged people from all over to seek the miracle at Fatima. Those who were in attendance that day claimed they saw something extraordinary. There were an estimated 30,000 people present for this, and most of them claimed to have seen the miracle. According to them, the sun started dancing in the sky. It made incredible zigzag motions, careening toward the Earth like it was going to collide with the planet. It emitted a bizarre spectrum of light, with multicolored rays bursting out of its fiery depths. This allegedly went on for 10 minutes and then abruptly stopped. In the aftermath of the miracle, a local bishop opened an official investigation. Local priests helped out in the investigation and were quickly convinced. Everyone in the area knew about the solar phenomenon, and even the skeptics who were in attendance that day admitted they saw something their eyes couldn't explain. Bishop Jose de Silva declared the miracle worthy, and from then on the cult of Our Lady of Fatima was officially recognized by the Catholic Church. But what really happened that day? Modern historians claim the so-called eyewitnesses who saw the miracle of the sun had shaky and unreliable testimonies. The main theory today is that eyewitnesses stared at the sun for so long they started seeing things. However, in 1950, it was announced that Pope Pius XII had witnessed the miracle of the sun from the Vatican gardens, but nobody knows what that was all about. Number 5. The Arco Volume. Reverend William Dennis Mahan published a pamphlet in 1879 based on original documents from Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. The Reverend was a Presbyterian from Boonville, Missouri. He was an ordinary minister and a respected member of the community. His 32-page pamphlet was called A Correct Transcript of Pilate's Court, and the Reverend even claimed that he discovered the original documents detailing Jesus Christ and the cross he died upon. The tiny pamphlet contained a report of Jesus Christ's trial and execution. The report was supposedly made to Roman Emperor Tiberius, written by Pontius Pilate, the governor of Judea. The idea that such a report was made isn't far-fetched. The Romans were excellent at keeping records, so if someone as famous as Jesus Christ was nailed to a cross and killed, there definitely would have been a bureaucratic paper trail. The curious part is that the documents came into the possession of a random minister from Missouri in the 19th century, and when he was grilled about where he got the document, William Mahan said a German scholar named Henry C. Weidemann gave them to him. Henry's brother-in-law, C.C. Wartburger, had apparently been sent the pages in New York so he could translate them. But the original pages were sent from Father Peter Frelinhusen at the Vatican. In 1884, the Reverend was at it again, and he published what became known as the Arco Volume. He claimed to have found even more documents, and this time they included testimony from the shepherds who witnessed Jesus Christ's birth. He also supposedly discovered documents detailing the young life of Jesus, which filled in gaps in the Bible. Most importantly, though, the volume contained an interview with Mary and Joseph. The Reverend may have gotten away with the first pamphlet, but the Arco volume really put him under the spotlight. Scholars started to poke holes in his story, and as it turned out, all the scholars William Mahan claimed to be involved with were, in fact, fictitious. As a result, he was tried by his church for forgery in 1885, and publicly humiliated. Do you think documents detailing the trial and execution of Jesus Christ truly exist somewhere? Tell us what you think in the comments, and while you're at it, subscribe. Number 4. The heresy of Novationism. In the 3rd century AD, anti-Pope Novation was elected in opposition to the legitimate Pope Cornelius. Novation was a respected member of the Church who worked as a secretary during Emperor Decius's persecution in 250 AD. It was his belief that the Church didn't have the authority to absolve an apostate of the sin of idolatry. Idolatry is a major sin and involves the worship of anything that isn't God. This was one of the first major divisions within the Vatican. People who respected Novation and his ideals became known as Novatians. They branched away from mainstream Christianity and became a heretic order. The followers of this Christian heresy held an extreme puritanical view. They believed in God, but not necessarily in the Church. Mortal sins, in their view, could only be absolved by God. They felt that bishops had no real spiritual power. The Novatians didn't shun sinners, but they wouldn't absolve them of their sins. There was no saying sorry at the end of one's life and being immediately forgiven by a priest. They believed only God could judge and redeem the soul after death. The official Catholic Church wasn't a big fan of that idea. If people didn't believe they could be absolved for the bad things they did, what in the world would they need the Church for? The Vatican used all the power at its disposal to crush the ideas being spread by the Novatians. So by the 5th century, most Novatians had been obliterated, and Novation himself was martyred for his faith in 258 AD. Number 3. The Treasure of Rennes-le-Chateau. The mystery of Rennes-le-Chateau has never truly been solved. The town is located between Le Mans and Quillan in the French countryside. It has only around 100 inhabitants, but the small town has a big reputation. Rennes-le-Chateau is known for the great legends that surround its ancient church. The legend of the French village is so important that many believe Dan Brown based the Da Vinci Code around what happened here. The village is high up in the mountains, and as you climb up the narrow road toward Rennes-le-Chateau, you'll see the ruins of a castle. Nearby the castle is a graveyard and a small, seemingly unimportant church. But next to the church is a villa, one that looks way too big compared to the surrounding structures. The house is absolutely massive and luxurious even by modern standards. It was built by local pastor Berenguer Saunière in the 19th century, and the pastor lived in the villa from 1852 until 1917. He began as a poor man of God, but by the end of his life he'd become obscenely wealthy. During the years that Saunière was a pastor in the village, the church was in tragic condition. The pastor put a huge amount of his energy into restoring the old building. He didn't have much in the way of financial help, but he had a hammer and some tools, and that was enough to do small repairs. According to the legend, it was during his restorative work that he found a treasure hidden inside one of the pillars. The treasure supposedly dated back to the days of Gothic rule almost 2,000 years ago. There were gold coins, jewels, and one particularly important parchment. The parchment was so important that when the church learned it had been discovered, they paid Saunière to keep his mouth shut. They took the treasure from the pastor, but ensured that he'd live an extremely comfortable existence. And over the next few years, the church in Rennes-le-Chateau was completely restored. Not only that, but the pastor built himself a luxury villa, complete with a tower. After he died, his housekeeper, Marie de Narnaud, inherited his wealth and lived a life of luxury herself until she too passed away. Whatever secrets Saunière found in that pillar died either with him or with Marie, and today there's nothing but speculation over what the parchment said. But still, some have suggested it may have contained the names of Jesus Christ's blood descendants. Number 2. The Voynich Manuscript. The Voynich Manuscript has been an enduring mystery since it was revealed to the world in 1912. Antiquities dealer Wilfrid Voynich came across the beautifully illustrated manuscript during one of his business endeavors. It's not clear where it came from, only that Wilfrid was extremely taken with the tome. It's 234 pages of indecipherable writing and astrological diagrams. It contains weird pictures of naked people and images of plants. It's been over a century and no scientist has managed to decode the incomprehensible writing inside the book. This is likely because it's not a variation of any medieval language nor any known language from anywhere else in the world. Voynich dated the manuscript back to the 13th century. It was his opinion that the entire book was written in code, which was something unheard of 800 years ago. The book is currently kept at Yale University. It's been studied by countless medievalists, scholars, and cryptologists. Just recently, a man named Nicholas Gibb claimed that he cracked the code, but it turned out that he hadn't. And to this day, nobody has. Modern technology has revealed that the book was written between 1404 and 1438 AD. It's only 600 years old, but the book is real. The first owner of the Voynich manuscript was supposedly Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph II, who held the throne from 1576 to 1612. He thought the book was written by English alchemist Roger Bacon in the 13th century. But nobody knows where the book came from before that, and nobody knows what's written in its pages today. Many have suggested it's a medical textbook written in a secret code. Conspiracy theorists believe the text contains astonishing secrets about the history of human origin. Some think the text is magic, and that anyone who reads it will be able to utter spells. One myth claims that the Vatican Library holds the secret to decoding the Voynich manuscript, but the Church refuses to help out of fear for what the text might say. Number 1. The Lost Years of Jesus. The lost years of Jesus Christ refer to the 18 years in which his history is omitted from the Bible. The Holy Book tells the story of what happened to Jesus Christ up to the age of 12, then starts again abruptly at the age of 30. Nobody knows what happened while he was a teenager or in his 20s. The conundrum of the lost years has baffled historians and Christians for centuries. There's not a single written record anywhere of what Jesus Christ was doing during those 18 years. And to make sense of this missing information, people have written their own religious scripture. They've come up with theories and legends, but there are no official texts to explain why Jesus vanished from records at 12 and didn't reappear until he was 30. In the early days, the first Christians made up their own stories. They said Jesus traveled thousands of miles into other countries. He supposedly studied in India with Eastern mystics, then traveled to Persia where he learned the secrets of Zoroastrianism. There are even rumors that he traveled to North America to visit the indigenous people there. And one of the weirdest stories is that Jesus visited Cornwall in England and had some role in the future history of King Arthur. Christians started making these stories up early on, but they've never really stopped. The general consensus today is still that Jesus Christ went on an 18-year walkabout across the world before returning to Israel. Many believe the truth of Jesus Christ's lost years is hidden somewhere in the Vatican. In the 19th century, rumors started to spread that a Russian traveler had found documents in a monastery in India. According to the traveler, these documents proved that Jesus had been there 2,000 years ago. He supposedly taught in the East through his 20s before going home. The Vatican allegedly knows all of this and has the proof hidden in their vaults. But, of course, they deny it. What do you think Jesus was up to during his 18 missing years? Let us know in the comments down below. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye.